It's kind of the part of the day where we all feel like a zillion bucks, right? So we're going to make this good, right? I'm changing all the questions.
Did we have any questions?
Yeah, you didn't get any questions, right? Is that right? All right, this is cool. I think we talked about this earlier this morning. Diaspora as an untapped resource. The Celtic nations kind of do that pretty well in the sense that they're lucky to have a diaspora. I think we're going to explore here what's really being done to maybe get more out of them. How about we introduce everybody on stage? Start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicola Lloyd. I am the founder of Global Cornish. Been working on that for the past 6 months or so. Early days, but previous to that, I worked in economic development and just saw such a huge untapped opportunity. So now I'm just a bit obsessed with diaspora.
Hi folks, Allan Mulroney. I'm the CEO of the Western Development Commission. It probably should be Aisling up here considering the research she's just put to you, but I'll try and do it justice. Anybody who works in economic development with a focus on social or economic knows there is no one-trick pony. There is a number of things that you need to try and do to progress a region or a county or a country, and the diaspora for me has always been an untapped resource. Even though Ireland does it particularly well, as a region or county by county, there's a whole lot more we could be doing. So I've been very eager to progress this, and really great to see Aisling's research start the ball rolling on that.
Hi everybody, I'm Alison Teare. I'm head of Locate Isle of Man. We're part of the Department for Enterprise, so I work alongside Kiri, and we're all about inward migration. So diaspora very naturally touches us a lot every day.
Let's start with Global Cornish, because it's sort of new and I find it to be very ambitious and a good thing. Who is inspiring you, number one, when you're doing this? And what's the motivation for saying, hey, this is the right time to do this?
Well, I could start with the fact that just yesterday I saw an article that there's an estimated 165,000 people due to leave the UK next year. I think people think about diaspora as some sort of ancient thing that happened many, many years ago. But I always say every day there's someone leaving Cornwall. They might be looking for a better job, they might be looking for a complete fresh start, but the one thing that never leaves them is Cornwall. That's, genuinely a hook that remains with people. So, just understanding that there is just this continuous migration, that there is this continuous hook, and there's inspiration across the world. I mean, cities, places, towns, countries, diaspora engagement is such a huge part of so many places in the world, and at the moment I think there's some really challenging times ahead. We've mentioned geopolitics, we know the impact that has, but I think what it does is it really creates an emotional need to connect with something that you love, a heritage, a culture, to feel a belonging to somewhere. There are those emotional responses in people, and sometimes when we can't really control the acts of certain powers around the world, what we can do is we can control little things that we can do, such as connecting back to where we feel home is. And when I talk about home, with Global Cornish, we talk about being Cornish by birth, ancestry and choice. And I think it is very much about affinity. And so we focus on anybody that really has that true affinity to Cornwall. And, they're welcome with Global Cornish.
Lee mentioned earlier the launch, which was at Westminster, big shebang. I didn't get an invite. What has been the reaction from that? Has it been what you expected? Are people coming out of the woodwork? What's happening?
It was a risky move, and we've reflected a little bit about this today because, it's still very, very early. And, I think what's really important is that you build a structure, but of course you've still got to build a following. And what do you do first? And, the first thing we wanted to do was engage with what is probably our largest group of diaspora, being in London. And we started with a room for 70 people. I quickly said, I think we should get a bigger room, so we went to 200, which, when you're really relying on contacts that other people have. We were starting from scratch, really. But we filled that room and some, it was definitely packed. And the response was really interesting. I think people have mentioned a few times when it comes to diaspora engagement, the last thing you want to do is just show up with a begging bowl. You want to bring opportunities and you want to bring connection first. And there's just that appetite from people to reconnect. They want to know what's going on now in Cornwall, because quite often their knowledge and their memory of Cornwall is one of the past. Even people that come back to Cornwall regularly, they might work away but come home for Christmas or something like that. They're really not seeing a family bubble of Cornwall. So the most important thing is that they were able to reconnect and start hearing about industry, about what's happening now, and that hopefully will then lead to conversations that unlock the future.
So the train has left the station. Congratulations, that's cool. We're going to get back to you in a second. I want to hear about the Isle of Man, because it sounds like you guys, the train is in the station. You guys are thinking about this and maybe getting inspired by some of the conversations we're having here. What is the state of this diaspora thing for the Isle of Man right now?
Okay, so I've been very inspired today. Before coming, I spoke to the president of Tynwald, Lawrence Skelly. I spoke to him because I knew he couldn't be here today, and he really wanted to be here today. And his love of the diaspora is well known. He lived in America for some years and was chair of the North American Diaspora Society, Mike's society there. And what I gleaned from that was, I think the train is very much in the station, but very much ready to go. And I think when we do make a move, we'll make quite a solid move. And I think he's committing some time to when he finishes his term in September. There has been the Cabinet Office published a global relations strategy in August last year, and that mentions diaspora as well. So yeah, I think the train is very much ready to go, and I think there's a lot of people thinking about it. So it's very positive.
What are some of the things you've heard right now from these communities and what they're doing that you think is probably a good thing to maybe piggyback on?
I suppose from a locate perspective, I'm talking to people from internationally, UK, globally, every day, and so are the team. And I think what I've learned from, obviously, in the past couple of weeks reading up about it and then talking to people today, what I'm finding quite fascinating is how people describe their own diaspora. So it doesn't seem to be a very prescribed thing. So some people are saying that their diaspora is anybody with, like Nicola was just saying, anybody with a love for that particular nation, somebody who's, like I think in Scotland, they have had sort of education in Scotland, or not particularly that ancestor route. It could be just that they feel an affiliation, a tie to that. And from a locate perspective, I hear that all the time. Literally, I mean, the most random connection when people ring about relocation to the island or visiting the island or just wanting to know more about life on the island, there will be some strange connective tie. It's not necessarily that they came from here originally or that their granny was from here, but it could be that they were at the Marine Biology Centre or that their partner's dog was from here, or they've come for the TT for the last 40 years, or there is this tie that, and I think that's interesting. Do we have to make it about ancestry? Can't it be broader? And I think that's probably what I've taken from being on this panel and learning today.
Allan, You're the CEO of the Western Development Commission. You're a big fan of collective intelligence. I followed remotely. You were going to all your areas and doing brainstorming meetings with people and their post-its and great ideas. And in your sort of plan for the future of the Western Development Commission, you prioritized diaspora in there. Explain to me why.
As an economic development agency, we do a number of things. As I said on the offset, there's no one-trick pony. So we have an investment fund that takes an equity stake in companies up and down the region. We do a lot of lending to communities who need to put a new roof on the community centre or build a new pitch. We do a lot of development projects using both Irish money and EU funding. We do a lot of policy research, as per Aisling's earlier, but also a lot more on airports, on road, on rail, on infrastructure, on sustainable development. Within that, in a lot of areas, our counties are competing. So our startups are competing across the region against each other. Within our counties, within our county borders, they're competing to attract foreign direct investment through another government agency called IDA Ireland. And sometimes it can be an us and them comparison. And oftentimes our hardest job is to try and get them to what we say, take off their Gaelic jerseys, take off that county colour and try and act together and work together. For me, when it comes to the diaspora, there is no us or them. It's a win-win. Because if you're trying to attract diaspora for the region or for a county, in our sense, County Sligo, Donegal, Leitrim, it's all individual. And it's a win-win. So it's no longer competing. And that's why I think there is such a win also with the Celtic countries, because if we collectively come together and use this power and become stronger as one, we're not competing against each other. It's a win-win. So, you have a very different diaspora to what we do, but our messaging and how we get that through to people. So even the word diaspora, I think with the man on the street, they don't understand what that is and what that means. For me, there's almost a communication strategy that needs to be rolled out to break that barrier down. And I think you're right, the idea that we have to be focused on those that are from the region or have a bloodline to the region isn't broad enough. The Scottish do it very well, the idea that you have a connection. And I think Aisling's research today, the early stages of what she pointed out to us, is very much about connection. Any connection to place, that idea that you belong somewhere has become so much more prominent now in the global instability that we have. Everybody's looking for a belonging. So the Irish have always capitalized on this, certainly in the States, because everybody in the States, as you know, wants to feel that they belong to a community, Italian, Irish, wherever it's going to be. But that has now grown to be much, much wider. And as we continue to see this instability, that want to connect and belong to something is only going to grow. So this is ours to lose.
You've seen the research, and I think that's a smart thing to do, to launch it and kind of dig into what people are looking for. What has surprised you in this research so far that you probably will try to apply pretty quickly?
I think one of the barriers we need to overcome collectively with the diaspora is, and it's come up quite a few times today, if Kingsley Aikens was here, somebody who I would see as a global leader in this, you're mining for coal and mining for diamonds, he often says, you can't go cap in hand, this isn't about money, but there is a misconception that the first thing or the only thing that happens with the diaspora is that you go looking for philanthropy. And that is almost a pinnacle, that's where you get to. And Kingsley often tells stories about how he worked with somebody for 15, 20, 30, 35 years in some instances, and finally had the courage after 35 years to go into a meeting and ask for funding from a very wealthy donor. But if that's the first thing you're asking for, you're going to lose 95% of the time. This is about the connection, it's about the support, it's about that emotional human response to help them feel connected. And from my own, I suppose, research, if you want to call it that, from my travels, certainly to the States in the last few years, any of the gentlemen or females that I've met who are high net individuals, they want to feel connected back to the community. It's never about, how can I sign a check? Because they get asked that all the time for many, many other things in their communities, in their local schools. This has to be about more than that. So how can you connect them back to the community and make them feel that they are adding more than just a checkbook? And the first part of that is understanding what is it that they need, what makes them tick. And some of the good examples that I've seen are some of the individuals I've met have been drawn to the education sector in the universities across the west of Ireland. How can they support that? Can they mentor? Can they join a board? Can they add some advice? Can they link them into some key people within the States or globally, as opposed to the final piece, which may be sign a check?
I want to go back to Locate Isle of Man. I want to give an example from the Lorient and southern Brittany area. Obviously, with COVID, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm stuck in like a small city. I want to, in my small apartment, I want to get back to where I was from originally." And one of the challenges was maybe the wife had found a job, but the husband had not. And we were talking a little bit about that before. What are some easy ways to sort of change that? Because in Lorient, specifically in the southern Brittany, they had created websites, they had ping things, and they really created an ecosystem to assist job finding for people so they could come back. The diaspora sometimes does want to come back, but they don't know how to. They don't know, they don't know the workings because they've been gone so long.
Yeah, so actually, I was smiling before at the diaspora engagement officer that you guys have, and I thought, I think I should change my title. I genuinely feel that that's what I am half the time, and that is about building a pathway for people to come back or to come to the island and bring their family with them. And every journey is different, so you can't build one pathway. And I think that is the key to understanding relationships and knowing that what we do in Locate Isle of Man is we do an awful lot of signposting. So we could be signposting to people, people who are helping with house, sort of moving to finding a house, to travel, to dogs, to pet passports, to, where would you do yoga? Do you like sea swimming? I mean, it is having that, building those relationships. And I think we've talked a lot about relationships today. And so providing that inward pathway in a very, very bespoke way for a lot of individuals at a lot of different stages. But what I would say is, I always say, have a visit. So that a person who has the link might have these very fond memories of whatever and have visited, but their family haven't. Just come. You have to visit. And hopefully you guys tomorrow will take advantage of the tour around the island in the morning, because without seeing somewhere, without immersing yourself even for a short time in a place, you don't get that feeling of that place.
Can I pick up on something there? You mentioned the diaspora officers. So we have one in Donegal County Council and none in the other county councils across our region. So Aisling mentioned there's a new national diaspora strategy which will be launched in about 2 months' time. When the government launched their previous diaspora strategy, they gave every county council in the country funding to create their own diaspora strategy in line with it. And a number of the county councils then put in place diaspora strategies, diaspora staff members. The impact that that's now had certainly was very clear from Aisling's research that Donegal County Council, who have somebody in place, it's made a huge impact, both on the ground in terms of what's coming in from an investment perspective, but also the connections that they've made, the events that they've had, and the progress. So it's very clear from the research that Aisling's done that the diaspora it's there. The challenge is it's dispersed and it's not organized. So, for me, as Aisling said, I thought our diaspora on the ground, or our connections on the ground, or communities would have been looking for training. They don't need training because they don't have time. They're already doing lots of work. It's how do you connect them? How do you connect and join the dots? And you'd be aware of our Connected Hubs project, Charles. So we took 400 dispersed digital hubs across Ireland, and the managers that were running them were all doing fantastic jobs, but on their own. They didn't know one from the other across the country. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've connected them on a digital platform. They meet once every 2 weeks online. They meet once a month in person. And then we've got a big hub summit every year. That has changed how that whole group of people operate, because they operate as one. And for me, I think there's an opportunity both within the west of Ireland, but also across the rest of the regions, to look at those communities and connect them, build them into something that drives together with one voice and one narrative, and that's when things will change.
Nick, I want to know what is next. What you guys have started with a bang. So what's the next bang look like? What are you guys doing in the months ahead?
what we've just done is had a local summit, a convention with local stakeholders. That was important because what comes next is more convening and more socialisation of global Cornish with the diaspora, but also with local stakeholders. And it's a bit like Allan was saying, it's that word diaspora. It's people thinking, oh, how can the diaspora add value to this business plan, to this trade opportunity for my business? Some of the charities might want to think about the diaspora they're already engaging with and how they might change their marketing approach as a result. It's just having that sort of thought process and thinking of what is for Cornwall a population that's 10 times the size of our local population all around the world, who are an excellent target market, and actually thinking about that very, very clearly when they're planning their future. So it's a little bit of continued socialization, but also working quite closely with some key partners in the education, sports world, but to try and look for some of those early wins, as again coining the phrase of Kingsley, because Kingsley Aikens has been very helpful in developing our strategy, but you do need to find those early wins, and they're not necessarily checks, but they are examples of how the diaspora can get involved.
Pretty cool, pretty cool. Can you just quickly tell me a funny Isle of Man breakfast diaspora story before we go?
So, yeah, I mean, diaspora follows me everywhere. So this morning I was having breakfast and the lady next to me, she said good morning. She was from Florida. I asked her what she was doing in the Isle of Man. She said, I'm on holiday with my husband. And I said, what brings you to the Isle of Man specifically? And it was basically because her husband is of Isle of Man ancestry. I think his grandfather was from the Isle of Man. She was asking me all sorts of questions about how she can track down her genealogy locally, and I need to put her in touch with you, I think, Alison.
Put her in touch.
I did say, Debbie, I'll find out today. I'll be with the right people to find out how to navigate the Isle of Man over the next 5 days while she's here, and make the most out of tracking down her family roots, or his family roots.
Hopefully they stand at the Monks Museum today. Maybe. Ask her.
All right, there is a flashing red light and it's stressing me out. It means I have to stop talking with you guys. So thank you again. And I think we're almost done. Almost, but a few things left. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you.